Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonno White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jonno White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Daniel McCarthy. Daniel is the CEO of Mobile Mentor and is based in Auckland, New Zealand. He defines himself as a global citizen, as I said, now based in New Zealand, and leading a technology services company across Australia, New Zealand, and the USA. an engineering graduate who has worked in commercial leadership roles in many countries and organizations such as Avis, Procter Gamble, LEK Consulting, etc. He's passionate about leading authentically and always learning from others. He is the CEO, as I mentioned, of Mobile Mentor, recently awarded Microsoft Global Partner of the Year in Modern Endpoint Management. I have to ask him a bit more about that. That's exciting. But mainly what's exciting is having you on the podcast,
Hi, Jonno.
Daniel. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was a bit of a mouthful, that last bit, wasn't it? I'll talk to that a bit more later if you want.
Yeah, please do. No, it's great. I think it's awesome. Now, if you can, obviously there's the description of what you do, but for our listeners, can you give everyone a bit of a window into the world of Daniel McCarthy right now, in terms of your organization and your role and what you're doing at the moment?
Sure, Jonno. Yeah, look, my role is to run a team of very specialist technologists, I guess, across Australia, New Zealand, and the US to deliver IT services. We call them modern endpoint management. That's effectively any device you use in the workplace, laptops, tablets, mobiles, to do your job. And I'm, I guess, privileged enough to be the CEO, and we have a team that spans geographically from Adelaide across to the east coast of the US, and all the points in between. Actually, we've even got a couple of people in the Philippines too, so it's even broader geographically. And there's 80 of us at last count, and growing, and we are very specialist in the Microsoft tech, hence that last mouthful. Sort of we're Microsoft Global Partner in Modern Endpoint Management, and we get called in to help deploy Microsoft technology inside organizations and to manage that tech on an ongoing basis as part of our managed service. The world of Daniel currently is often spent in my home office on Teams meetings for many hours a day with
Yes.
customers, partners, our team, my team, etc. So it can be quite it can be quite lonely in some ways, but equally quite diverse in the kind of day. As I said to you before I joined, before we started this podcast, this is, I think, my 12th conversation today on virtually.
Wow. I feel like there'd be a lot of listeners nodding along from their home offices right now anyway, or they're listening in a couple of years' time going, that's right, I remember that. Hopefully that's where we get to, right?
Or they're walking around. Yeah, I think, John, I've become quite famous is the wrong word, but well known for doing a lot of walking meetings.
Yes, I love a walking meeting.
I decided not to do that with this call because of the noise around, but I tend to do a lot of walking meetings. So that there's probably people listening to this podcast who are themselves walking around with headphones in some park somewhere. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I do a lot of listening to podcasts when I'm cycling. So, it is. There are probably a lot of people out and about. So thank you for giving us a bit of a window into what you do, and keen to chat a bit more about that. And it's really interesting, the field you're in. But tell us a bit more about Daniel's story. Feel free to go back as far as you want. What are some of those moments that really shaped you becoming the leader you are today?
Right. I guess I grew up in Malta, a little island in the Mediterranean, and I was the son of two teachers. And at some point in my early years, my father gave up his teaching career to become an entrepreneur. And I think he was actually an entrepreneur already. He was already doing some work on the side as well as being a teacher. And I guess I watched my father build a tourism business from quite early age, and helped him, and was in there, putting mail outs into envelopes and typing up things for him, and just my older brother, and I both helped my father in his business, and that gave me an insight into, I guess my father was the first leader I watched operating, right? And then I was lucky enough to end up in the UK, where I studied engineering, and well, out of that, I guess I was always looking for those leadership roles, whether it was at college, whether it was in part-time roles that I had. Whether it was even projects I was involved in engineering. It was kind of a bit of a natural thing for me to seek. Maybe because I'm looking to control the outcome or whatever it is. So I started leading people. I ran the college bar that had its own benefits and perks. I was captain of a number of things. So it sort of was, those were the first experiences of leadership. You could say I just said yes to opportunities when they came up, right? That was my way of becoming a leader in the early days. And then I started my life working in the UK for Procter Gamble. And again, I guess it's the same. Whenever there was an opportunity to lead small teams, I would put my hand up. Sometimes I got it. Sometimes you didn't. That's something you learn over time. And I spent the next, so over time, I guess I moved around countries. I worked in Italy. I worked in the US. I worked even ended up working in Indonesia for a small period of time. In Australia, in New Zealand. I moved around, and what I enjoyed is the diversity of thinking that you get from being, as I call myself, a global citizen. And it's different cultures have different ways of approaching problems, of approaching conflict, approaching cooperation, and I've learned to adapt to that and to use that. Nowadays I'm proud of the fact that in Mobile Mentor, at last count, I think we had 17 nationalities in our team. As I said, not just geographically distributed, but culturally diverse as well. And I think that creates better conversations and better opportunities to break down problems and find different solutions, right? But it is harder as a leader. It's much easier to manage a team that all think the same. But I'm not sure that that's the kind of thing I'd want to lead or manage over time. And somehow I've ended up in New Zealand running a tech business across 3 countries. I don't know that it was in the plan when I left college many years ago as an engineer, but I love it and I love what I do, and I guess it's part of what makes me tick is that combination of leading a great team and doing some great things with our customers.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing a bit of your story. If we go back to watching your dad lead, and as you said, already being an entrepreneur, but watching him take that step to build the travel business, do you remember any specific moments that really stand out to you as sort of leadership or life lessons from watching your dad lead in business? Like any moments where you watched on and got a front row seat to a really hard time where you sort of learnt by being with him through that, or seeing him make some great decisions where you went, wow, that's what he just did with that client or that customer was brilliant. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, it's sort of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Watching your own father. And I didn't end up in the tourism business. But I guess I learned the power of vision from an entrepreneur, and how he saw opportunities that others didn't. He opened whole new markets for Maltese people to go overseas to places that they hadn't even been to before. Tunisia, Sicily, places that wouldn't feature in if everyone was going to Rome and Paris and all those kind of places. He opened new markets. So I saw that, and I was always in awe of his ability to identify a niche and really crack it open, have a crack at it. There was also the other side of an entrepreneur, which is that inability to let go of
Yeah.
control of the business, and ultimately he got sick and was unable to really hand over the business to somebody else when he got sick, and that was another lesson, which is that you've got to get this balance of this entrepreneurial fearlessness and vision balanced out with the ability to let go of the operational reins in a way and have somebody else do that. And I remember very clearly taking those away with me and thinking, I'm not the entrepreneur that he is. I haven't got that but I understand how the success for me is being able to have other people step in and do my role with very little impact on the organization. In a way, it's sort of, you're always looking to make yourself redundant from every role that you go into, and that's stuck with me for my whole career, actually.
Yeah, that's really profound.
So those are probably two big lessons from watching an entrepreneur in action.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing so vulnerably about your dad.
Oh, sorry, there's probably another one, Jonno.
Yeah, jump in.
There's
Go
probably
for
another one, which is the loyalty that his people had towards him, and how he treated them with respect, and treating people with respect, and the loyalty he built in the team was also very formational for me, and it's something I seek to model every day, really.
Yeah, that's a wonderful lesson, and something that I think you would pick up a lot from watching someone closely, because there's a real gift and there's a real nuance to leading people in that way that you have to deeply care, because people pick up. If you really got their back, people will be very loyal, and it's amazing how much that can make a difference when you're leading people.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about more recently in your journey, as you have as you've grown and traveled the world in different places? Are there any moments in your leadership journey that come to mind as really pivotal moments as a leader, where you went, oh my goodness, I'm in the deep end, or I've dropped the ball here, and it was a real pivotal moment, or something where you had no idea what you were going to do, but you ended up getting to the other side with your team and having a big win, and it's really stuck with you? Any moments like that?
Oh, look, there's plenty of moments. There's plenty of micro failures, right? In the leadership journey.
Yeah, that's good.
And there's probably some macro failures too. But I think one of the, I don't know who said it, or whether it's even if it's even quoted by anybody, but every failure is a learning opportunity, right? And and if you're not learning, if you're not failing, you're not learning. We didn't learn to walk by standing up and starting running straight away, right? All of us learned to walk by taking a lot of tumbles. Whether it's learning to ski, whether ride a bike, whatever it is. And if you're pushing yourself and always being slightly outside your own comfort envelope, then you're gonna hit things, and you're gonna break things, and you're gonna sometimes break yourself too. So there's been plenty of those, and some of them were a result of me overestimating my ability at the time. And thankfully, I've been surrounded by great people who've been able to step in and say, I don't think you're ready for this, or I don't think this is right for you right now. And some of it is I guess not having the answer, and sort of going to those around me to help find the answer. I spent 10 years as a consultant, a strategy consultant, actually probably longer. And it's very tempting to feel as a consultant that your job is to find the answer and to have the answer and to be the smartest person in the room. But actually, over time, you realize that the real transformation and power comes from not necessarily being the smartest person in the room, but I guess being the most curious person in the room and asking the questions of the team. So my objective these days is probably to be the least smart person in the room, but ask of those around me for the answers, because there's more of them. Doesn't mean you don't contribute, but it's about getting the answers from those around you. So my journey has been full of bumps and scrapes and disappointments, and the trick has been not to take it too personally, but to learn from it.
How have you done that? I think a lot of listeners would be, because I'm thinking that as well. It's like it's so easy to hear that and to say that even, but I've found personally that's really hard to do. What have you learned? What advice would you give? What advice would you give, particularly to a young leader who really needs to hear that, and how can they do that?
Yeah, look, I agree. By the way, and you know how we always make our lives sound a lot easier in retrospect than it was. It's a bit like building your CV and pretending that it was all planned from when you were 21, and then realizing that actually it was all a bunch of accidents, and that you ended up where you are.
Yeah,
but I guess I had a great mentor, sort of mental coach that I came across a few years ago. She lives in Sydney these days, and she took me down the path of recognizing that a lot of the noise is in your own head. And she had this great expression about, you've got to slow. Your brain is like a fan, and it's spinning and thinking a million different thoughts. And if you don't slow it down, it's a bit like trying to throw a paper airplane towards a fan. That paper airplane will never get there. So you've just got to slow things down and actually allow your brain to focus and to think. That's harder said. It's easier said than done. And I wish I could pretend that I was always a big mindfulness kind of guru, sitting cross-legged, thinking about these things, and I didn't. But I guess learned over time to take it on the chin and actually learn from it and say, what's the thing I'm going to learn from what's just happened, right? Because one of the things I love about the American culture is that sort of, oh yeah, you knock me down, but I'm going to get up again. What's the Captain America expression? I could do this all day, and it just gets up every time. Spot the Marvel fan. It's one of those things where you've just got to build resilience in yourself and a belief in yourself. And we've all got our own unique set of talents and skills, and all 8 billion of us are unique in many ways. And ultimately, it's the advice I'd give someone who's young and sort of starting out is don't take it personally. Just think of it as literally something that you've just been taught. Here's another lesson. Just like if you're in a boxing ring and you get punched in the eye, then well, hopefully you're not going to expose that eye anymore. You're going to block it. So take each lesson and dust off and move on. Doesn't mean you can't feel sorry for yourself for a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because in a sport or in arts, you'd never expect to start painting and just go, you know what, for my first painting, I'm just going to really nail it. I'm going to nail a landscape. You just go into it assuming I'm probably going to be pretty bad to start with. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'll have a good teacher and I'll get better. Or in the boxing ring, like you said, I'm probably going to get knocked down. I probably won't win my first fights because I'm just still learning, but it's going to help me work out. Like, we don't assume we're just going to walk in a ring. But with leadership, I certainly felt like that a little bit. Like, I walked in going, okay, it's time for I'm going to have a perfect record from day one. You're not necessarily thinking that consciously, but there is definitely in high achievers and high performers, maybe because you get rewarded for high performance, you assume that the leadership and leading people is about not making any mistakes when it's actually almost the other way around.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a really good observation. There's this aura almost around certain leaders that they're kind of infallible or invincible or whatever, right? Because they've been built up. I mean, I came to a generation of sort of, Jack Welch, and the Sage of Omaha, whose name has just escaped me. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett. Thank you. People like that who just had just nailed it in that particular company or in that particular period of time. But no one ever talks about the failures they've had too.
Yeah.
Right. And how they've learned from those, because all the books get written about the amazing success and their methods and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so true.
Whereas most leaders, and sort of the more you hang out with leaders and the more authentic you are about how you view life and leadership and so on, the more you realize that other leaders are equally flailing around sometimes, trying to figure out, the answer with their team.
Absolutely.
And so I guess we just need to demystify leadership a little bit to being much more this ability to recognize that you don't have the answers and to motivate and encourage others to help you with that.
Yeah, I like how you said that around not knowing the answers, and what you said earlier really sticks out to me around trying to fill the room trying to be the the least smart person in the room because you fill it with people who are smarter than you.
Yeah, you just need to be curious and ask questions. And also, I guess the other dimension of leadership that I'm particularly passionate about is this idea that my job is to help my team excel.
Yeah.
That's all I'm there to do, right? So if that means coaching, if that means providing guidance, if that means helping solve problems, whatever it is, I've got an amazing team made up of amazing individuals who can all excel if I provide the right environment and the right conditions. So my job is pretty simple, really, which is making sure that others succeed.
Yeah, that's so good. That's actually been my biggest learning from doing this podcast, from talking to leader after leader after leader. The thing that stuck out to me the most is I think I've always loved the idea of servant leadership, but there's something about the servant serving that I find it's a bit hard to put it into practice unless you wash the feet of every employee on you. Like, there's something about it that doesn't quite go. It's hard to put it into practice. But what I've definitely heard is this idea of support, like realizing, I can't tell you how many leaders have said again and again, the big light bulb moment for them was when they stopped expecting their team to support them and realized really their job was to get in and support their team and create, like you said, create the right environment, coach them, support them, and they then flourish and you support them as they train their team. And it's like if you can support your people and not think of them as there to support you, oh, these are my 5 people on my team who are here to support me, but actually turn up every day to support them, that's probably the biggest mindset shift that's been a real aha moment for me since starting this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. In a funny sort of way, sacrilege as it might sound, so the leadership team, and I think they do this in some companies, the leadership team should select the CEO. um, and I'm pretty sure I've seen some companies that do this. But I had a guy in my team who openly said to customers, the least useful person in the room right now is the CEO, and I used to agree with him. I said, no, you're absolutely right. The least useful is definitely me, because the experts are the rest of the team. But that is servant leadership, and you're right. It's not about servitude is a horrible word, but support and motivation and so on. That's what it takes for a team to succeed, and conflict resolution sometimes, right?
Oh, 100%.
In fact, one of my accountabilities that we talk about in my team is that I am the chief conflict resolution resolver.
Oh, I like that.
And that's, again, about trust. So the team trusts that I am going to have everyone's back, and that actually I'm going to look to resolve the conflict in the best possible way. And it takes some skill too of knowing individuals' triggers and personalities and so on and so forth. So that's probably one of my key attributes these days.
I really like that, being the chief conflict resolution sort of officer. What about building that sort of trust and authenticity across a company culture? What have you learnt about doing that across a whole group of people, particularly like you are leading now in different locations?
Yeah, many of whom I haven't actually physically met. Look, I don't know that there's a copybook on this, of course, but I've always believed that you've got to model it to get people to believe it, right? So I model trust and I model authenticity as much as at every opportunity I get. I inherently trust people. I trust that people are going to do the right thing. 99% of the time I've been proven right. And I try and be as authentic as possible. Again, being conscious of cultural differences across place, right? Not everyone necessarily appreciates a loud Maltese, excitable person, but we spend too much time at work to leave our real self at the door, right?
Yeah.
We want to be ourselves when we're at work just as much as when we're not at work. And so if you create a place of an environment of trust, and I truly believe that humans are inherently trustful creatures. If you create that environment of trust, I think you said it before, that we've got each other's back, and that we're not there, we're there for a common purpose and so on, then on the whole, people will really resonate with that and will behave beyond what you would imagine, actually. I think people, it's almost like people fall into the swim lane and go faster.
You're
because they feel supported, they feel that I've been there. I've been on the other side. I've been in organizations where fear was a dominant factor, and then people close up, and people don't push the boundaries, and people don't object, and when something's heading towards a wall, they just step out the way and let it crash.
True. You're right.
I believe you've got to model it, and people have got to believe you've got to believe that those around you, your boss, your colleagues, are trusting you to do your job. And when you make mistakes, you go, "Oops, that was me."
Mm.
Um, you know, so I think there's the reason I think people end up in performing even better in an environment of trust is you're not wasting mental energy on self-preservation.
Yeah, that's so true.
I believe when people live in fear, well, fear is a very strong word, but when people live in that kind of uncertainty and doubt, you're wasting a lot of mental energy just
Mm.
defending yourself. Your brain is sitting in the background,
Yeah.
listening out to signals of danger. And so your brain isn't really 100% committed to what you're doing, your job, or the outcome you're serving your customers, whatever it is. Whereas in an environment where you trust people around you, that is a very small. The mental energy is focused on the positive contribution that you're making. So,
That's
in
I
a
mean,
way, it's
I've never thought about it that way. That's really it might sound obvious to some, but to me that's quite revolutionary.
yeah. If you think of it as an efficiency in how you spend your energy,
Yeah.
you want to be in an environment where you're spending it all on doing the good stuff. That's your job, and not spending any of it worrying about who's going to tell you off, how you're going to lose your job, or when you're going to lose your job, or you know. And I'm sure people listening will have been there, in that environment, and realize that they spent too much time in what I call self-defense mode.
It reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that idea of all the good stuff being at the top around, that's where a lot of your transformation, self-actualization, esteem, love and belonging, like that's the stuff that's going to be involved in great teamwork and in getting some great wins together and winning a championship, being a championship team that really takes things to another level and then sustains it. But safety and that, the physiological needs and safety needs are at the bottom. And it's so true that if you have people that are in the safety zone and worried and afraid, then that's where their energy is going to be spent. And it shouldn't be surprising to us because it's literally, how we see the way psychology works. That if you have people living in the safety realm and worried and afraid for their job and for their security and potentially not feeling like it's a safe space for them as well to say what they think and those sort of things, then you're not going to see the transformation. And because not only do they not have that energy, but they're how can they shift into that mode when you've created a culture, which is really the leader's responsibility, that allows that sort of culture where people are just trying to feel safe.
That's right. I mean, Google did all that research around high-performing teams, right? And psychological safety
Yeah.
was a fundamental to the highest performing teams. I think of it as energy and wasted energy.
I like it. I like that view.
If you're
How can you? Because we all know what it's like to lead people and think, how can I make this easier for you? And that's a win, right? Like if you can support the people, and you want to be the sort of leader where people go, it's so easy to follow them. Like they really do. They're the sort of leader who they'll jump in and get roadblocks out of the way for me. But one of the keys to doing that is creating a culture where people can feel safe and therefore feel secure and spend all of their energy focusing on transformation, high level goals, stretch goals, those sort of things.
yeah,
Well,
and
I
then people
think
give you 100+% of their energy, right?
yeah,
Because they
you're
feel
right.
safe. Yeah.
I think we're just touching the surface around some of this stuff, Daniel. So I'd love to invite you back for another conversation because there's so many points that I had written down that I haven't been able to get to. But it's because it's just been I've just loved chatting around these different ideas and your story. It's been wonderful. Let's do Leadership Express. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What's a book that you've gifted a lot to people?
It's a book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman.
Ah, fantastic. I know Gino Wickman from Traction.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay. I haven't read
Correct.
Rocket Fuel. That's awesome. Oh, I love hearing about
It's
new.
the Rocket Fuel is the kind of the shortened version of Traction.
Oh, okay,
Very
brilliant.
easy to read. I read it on a plane once in an hour or whatever it was, and I gift it to a lot of my people I come across
That's a
because
cracker of a
it
recommendation.
created the model I run my business on these days. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Any
Yeah.
great podcasts that you're listening to at the moment, or other sources you're reading, watching, listening to?
Look, I mix around, but I'm a massive Simon Sinek fan,
Yep.
and in doses. Brené Brown and Sir Ken Robinson, who sadly passed away last year.
Oh,
Big education um, specialist or guy, British guy, ended up living in the US. Those would probably be my top three regular go-tos.
yeah, wonderful. What is a time management or productivity tip or a tool or resource you use in that space?
Um, I Two tips, I guess. One is I'm a proficient user of my diary to block out time to do work.
Yep.
I don't just use my diary for meetings, but I use my diary for meetings with myself,
Yes.
which is the time I get to do, because otherwise, I learned this the hard way, otherwise your meetings crowd out your thinking time.
Mm,
So
true.
I'm also a big believer in exercise in the morning, so you've got the adrenaline pumping through your body, and I'm more efficient when I do that, more effective. And then a tip I learned quite late in life, but really important, is plan your week before it plans you.
Mm.
So
How do you do
a bit
that?
of time on a Sunday night, or if I'm busy with my family, first thing Monday morning. Um, make sure you plan your week, and but not to the 100th percentile, but certainly know what are the big things you want to achieve that week, and what are the big meetings you're going to have that week, and just have a good sense of the week you're about to dive into. Because otherwise, before you know it, it's Tuesday, and you've you know you've not your week is running you instead of the other way around.
Yeah, that's great advice. What is a movie or TV show that really impacted you?
Oh, really impacted me. Schindler's List would be one of my
Oh, yeah.
all-time movies that just I don't know that I'd say it's a fun watch.
Yeah,
Certainly an insight into human behavior and at both extremes.
yeah, you're right. That's in terms of living out your values. That's doesn't get much more
Mm.
powerful than the story of Schindler's List. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say?
Listen more, and be yourself.
Yeah, I like that you threw that in. That's
I
good.
should have told myself that in my 20s.
I think
I should
all
have
of us,
listened.
if there are any 20-year-olds listening, listen more and be yourself. I think all of
Please
us.
listen more.
Oh, that's so good. And
Speak
lastly,
less, listen more.
oh yeah, speak less, listen more. Gold. What's the best thing you're doing at Mobile Mentor that other leaders should know about? Like anything you're doing now or you've started doing recently, you're just like, oh, this leadership thing I'm doing, or this type of meeting, or this, anything you're doing that's sort of the best thing you're doing at the moment.
Oh, that's a hard question, Jonno. I don't know that it's the best thing. It works. It seems to be working for us. So I've really struggled. I've really struggled with the cohesion of a business that's grown quite fast across, as I say, multiple geographies with travel restrictions and so on.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's innovative in any shape or form, but we've started what we call the regular water cooler. And it's like a little 15 minutes, 20 minutes, where we all get together and I split everyone off into meeting rooms with a bit of a kind of teaser question. And it's about just getting 3, 4, 5 people in a room to just talk to each other about something that's not necessarily not business related.
I love that.
Which
That's
we're an
That's
IT
fantastic.
company, so we're and we just whatever it is, but favorite photo or whatever it is, like, and it's the sort of things. It's still a virtual meeting. Don't get me wrong. But it's just gets us talking to each other at a human level, and we're not talking tech, or we're just learning about each other a little bit more. And as the business scales, I want to make sure we maintain our culture and of learning from each other and so on. So that's always it's just something we're experimenting with. And I'm sure I know many other leaders are experimenting in different ways. And the pandemic has pushed us there.
Yeah.
We just have to make the most of it.
The thing I love about that is no one, like, we don't know what we don't know. And so we've never been such a virtual workforce. And so it wasn't like we've ever really had the data or research on what it is that you miss out on when you go virtual, really. And I feel like I love that, because it's like those water cooler moments, those walking past each other, making a cup of tea in the office, having some of you in the room together when you're on a team meeting with overseas. It's like those moments where you're just together and you actually think, what's the point? There is something in that. We've all learnt that the hard way by going, what is this missing from being online? This is different, and this is missing something. And I think more and more we're going to have to think creatively about how to create some things really intentionally as leaders, that when you're all physically working in the same office at the same location, happens very naturally.
That's right. And some of it is really learning how to be yourself virtually. And
Yeah.
we've all learned to be ourselves physically through interactions with people, but we've had this crash course in suddenly becoming virtual human beings, and there's a set of skills there that we're all practicing every day these days, both from a work and from a personal perspective. So it's quite a journey for all of us. I watched my kids, go through a couple of years now of online learning on and off, and the stuff they're learning on how to be a virtual citizen is quite different to how we learned. So
I agree. I think it's it's definitely forced us to push the envelope, and there's a lot of things that I think we are learning that we'll look back on, and there'll be some big aha moments in the future based on what we've all been walking through together. This has been so much fun, Daniel. For those who are listening and just really loving your story and Mobile Mentor, where can people find you online if they want to connect?
I guess mobilementor.com is our website. I'm on there. If you want my contact details, then probably LinkedIn is a good way to connect with me. Don't send me random LinkedIn requests because put some context around them, even if it's just mentioning this podcast or whatever, because I get a lot of frankly, there's a bit of spam that goes into LinkedIn these days, and I've got to be quite careful on how and who I connect with.
Yeah, you're right. It can be a bit hard to find
or,
the
or
needle
through
in the haystack.
or connect. Yeah, or connect to me through our mobile mentor website. There's a contact information there, and people who want to can get hold of me. So
Excellent.
hopefully there's some insights that people can learn from.
Oh, 100%. I've really enjoyed it. I've definitely learned a lot today. So to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, we also have the leadership question of the day, where I ask you a different question in every episode to put a stone in your shoe and challenge you in your leadership, and the Jonno White Leadership Podcast, which is more 7 tips on how to create a healthy culture, and just sort of I unpack those sort of different pieces there. But the biggest thank you is for Daniel. I've just really loved chatting today, and thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And there's lots of advice you've given that's churning around in my brain, that I feel like has been really helpful for me and challenging in the best way. And I think it'll really help listeners too. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, Jonno. Good to meet you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me. Well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And you know, my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jonno White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders This topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.